Hi there, it's Michelle from CNC Designs. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in New Zealand. In today's video, I'd like to show you some of the steps to make a handmade card. So I will be showing you how to start making your card, and I'll complete a couple cards on the video to show you how easy it is to make a lovely handmade card. And then at the end, I will be showing some samples of some more complicated cards I've made. In the description of this video, I will have links to the other videos I have made for some of the more complicated cards. So if you'd like to take your card making further, you can go have a look at some of those other videos. I will also be putting in the description the names of all the products that I show in this video. So if you're interested in getting started and purchasing any of these products, you can contact your Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, or if you're in New Zealand and don't already have a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, you can go to my website, michellekritchley.stampinup.net. So hopefully you'll learn a bit from this video, and if you haven't made cards before, this will give you all the tips you need to get started, and I'd love to see what you make. You can always add pictures in the comments of the video. So what you need is you need some cardstock. Now that's different than just straight paper. It's slightly thicker, and depending on which type you use, you have different thicknesses. So here I've got two different colors. I'm going to show you different types of cards. This is our basic white, and then this is the Emerald Evergreen. Oh, sorry, Evening Evergreen. Now, there's a couple different ways you can cut your cardstock. This, because I'm in New Zealand and we use metric measurements, is an A4 size piece of cardstock. You might be in a country that uses letter size, but the tips I'm going to show you will work either way. So there's two ways you can cut your card. The most common way to do it is to cut along the narrow part of the card, and then you get two card bases. So this being a metric A4 piece, I'm going to cut it at about 14.8 centimeters. And so you cut it in half, and now you can make two cards from this. Then the other thing you need to do is fold it. So you could simply just fold it edge to edge for your card base, and then just press it down to give you a nice card. So there you go, there's your card. Or what's better for the card is if you score it first. So this is a scoring tool. It's not sharp, it's just got a little ball there. And so if I score this at 10.5 centimeters, this is our trimming tool, score and trim tool. So if I scored at 10.5 centimeters, scoring is where you have a line, and then that makes it easier to fold. And because I scored it first, it breaks up the fiber in the cardstock, so it sits better. Now, if you have something to rub against it to smooth it out, like a bone folder, you could just use your fingers, but the oils from your skin might go on the card. And I'll show you a close-up to show the difference between doing it with the scoring and without. So hopefully you can see that. This one I scored and that one I didn't, and it does have a slight difference. But if you don't have a score, just doing it that way is fine. So that's one way you can do your cards, and then I could decorate the cards to have it opening this direction, or I could decorate it to have it that direction. This is what's considered portrait, and that's considered landscape. Now another way you can cut your cardstock, again using the one full-size A4 piece of card. This time I'm going to cut it the long way. So I'm going to cut it in 10.5 centimeters. Wherever you are, if you have a different size, basically just cut it in half long ways. So cut it in half there. And this time I'm going to fold it this direction. So I know that would be 14.8 centimeters. I'm just going to score it to make it easier to fold, and then just fold it on the score line. And I'll do the other one, folding it just by hand. So if you're going to fold it by hand, make sure you get the edges nice and flat. And it's best if you start in the center and rub either way. So if you don't have a bone folder, you can simply do it like that. And again, from one piece of cardstock, I end up with 2 card bases. So again, I can have portrait, but this time the card's actually going to open this direction. Or I can have a landscape card and it opens that direction. Now, you notice I cut the cardstock 2 different ways, but I end up with the exact same size. So all those cards are exactly the same size, even though they will open different directions. And they will be used decorated different ways. So that's the first step, is getting your card base. Then it's simply the decorating. Now you can put paper, stickers, whatever you want on there, but I'm going to show you a few tips. So one thing that you can do is stamp directly onto the cardstock. Now if you have a light cardstock like the basic white here, you can simply stamp directly onto the card. However, if you have a dark cardstock, in this case the Evening Evergreen, if you stamp directly on there, it might not be that visible. So in that case, you would want to stamp on a separate piece of cardstock and then layer it up. And I'll show you some samples in a minute. So for this one, I'm going to use stamps from the Beauty of Friendship and show you how quick and easy it is to do the card. So in this case, I'm going to have the card sitting this way. It'll open that direction. And I'm going to stamp the tree in Early Espresso. So when you ink up your stamps, you just want to gently tap. Sometimes just the weight of the block is enough to get ink on there. You don't want to push hard. You do not want to get ink all around the edges. If you press hard, you will get ink around the edges. You just want to tap it a few times to pick up the ink. This is a photopolymer stamp, so I can see right through it. If it's not if it's a red rubber stamp, which I'll be using later, you can't see through them. So that is made out of red rubber and I can't see through it. So in that case, you turn it over to check that the ink's everywhere. But I'm in the habit of turning them over anyway. And so for here, I'm just going to simply stamp right on the front with my tree. And just straight down and straight up. You don't want to wobble it. And that gives you a nice clear image. Now, as I said before, sometimes you stamp on a layer and put it on there. If you are stamping this way, you have to make sure it's not an ink that will seep through. And then I'm going to put the rest of the tree together. So this time I'm going to use soft succulent. This stamp set is a multi-step stamp set. So we've got like a base and then you can add on to it with different layers. Some stamp sets simply the stamp and that's it. So again, I'm just going to tap it a few times. And it's a light color here, so I can't always see whether it's there. And what you can do, always have scrap paper below what you're stamping, because then you can simply test it out. So you can stamp it onto your scrap paper and see how it looks. So even though it doesn't look like there's ink on there, I do know the ink is there. Oh, the other thing is try not to smear your paper. Watch what you're doing with your fingers. In that case, I smeared my paper. So that's okay. We can put embellishments on there to hide that. So then, because it's see-through, it allows me to line it up, see through what I'm doing, so I can actually line it up onto the next piece. There we go. And so there's one layer. And then I'm going to use one other color of green. So I'm going to use the Evening Evergreen ink for the next step, because I could leave it like that, which is quite beautiful in itself, but I want to add a little bit of more depth. So I'm using another stamp. And again, being see-through, I can look through it to see how it lines up. And if you're doing the see-through ones, it's best to stand up while you stamp so you can see straight through. There we go. There. So now I've got 2 layers there. And then another little stamp for the bottom, just to make it look like we're sitting on some grass. So that's it. Simply stamp onto the card. Looks quite nice already. But I'm going to add some words to it. And these words are friendship refreshes the soul. I'm going to simply put that right there by the tree. And I did that in the early espresso ink. So there is my card. Now I did do a little mess up there. What you can do is, if you have things like that where you touch the ink and you weren't supposed to, you can simply cover it up with embellishment, a ribbon, but I'm going to try to stamp the other tree images on there and see if I can cover it up that way. So with making handmade cards and projects, I say there's no mistakes, there's just opportunities for embellishments. So I'm going to attempt to do this without smearing. And also, if it was really bad, I could just cut out a layer and put a layer on top so you don't see that. So we're going to go back to my soft succulent. And let's see if we can get that part covered up. So if I do this, like trying to make a tree, put the tree right there. And it's okay if it goes slightly off the page. There we go. So right now, you can't even see it. It looks good just as it is. But I'm going to then add the evening evergreen. Give it some more interest, like I did with the other one. And just straight through. There we go. There, I got a couple trees. I could maybe add some more color at the bottom if I want it to give it some balance. Look like there's some brown. I could even go ahead and add something at the top. But that's just simple stamp, card, ink, and stamps. So that's one little card. So now this card, this is the second one I had there. I could do another card the same direction, but this time I'm going to do a portrait type of card. And instead of using all the different inks, I'm just going to simply use one black ink, my Memento Tuxedo black ink. So white card, black ink. And this time I'm going to go a different direction. And because it's a red rubber stamp, so I can't see where the ink is when I'm looking that way, I turn it over, and if I angle it in the light, I can see where the ink has actually touched the stamp. So if I notice any parts that haven't got ink, I simply press more onto the stamp pad. And moving it around the stamp pad's a good idea, because if you're constantly just stamping in the center of the ink pad, that will use up the ink there, but not around the edges, and you might have areas that aren't covered. So moving it around the pad helps when you're stamping. So for this one, I'm simply going to pop it up part way, straight down, nice firm pressure. You don't want to wobble it, but you want firm pressure on the whole stamp to make sure it comes out. Now see there, that's what happens if you wobble it, because there was some ink on the edge of the stamp, so I got a smudge there. But that's okay. As I said before, that's just opportunities to embellish. Now this set is the Quiet Meadow set, so I've stamped the flowers, and I'm going to do the heartfelt love and carrying thoughts with you. And again, that's a red rubber ink stamp. Turn it over and check, and see I haven't got any ink on the edges, so that's when you ink it up, try not to wobble it either, because that's what happens. So we're just going to stamp that straight down. It's straight up. And another good tip is cover your ink pads as soon as you use them so you don't accidentally put something in there. So there, that's nice and simple. I could use some pens or some pencils to add color there. Another thing I can do is add ribbon. So I've got the black and white gingham ribbon. I could add that there if I wanted it to just be black and white. Or I could add some color to it. This is a fresh freesia. Now I think because I have that mark there, I'm going to go with the black and white. And another tip, when you have a ribbon, if you have it on the reel, I like to tie my bows while it's still on the reel, because then that doesn't waste as much ribbon. So you can just put a bow or whatever you'd like there. So I'm just going to pop the bow down. And now I'm just going to use a glue dot. You could use tape to put down the ribbon. Ribbon doesn't really go very well with liquid glue, so it's always better to use a glue dot or tape to stick it down. And I'm just going to stick the glue dot onto the back of the bow. And then if I place that strategically, I can place it there, and then I can actually put another glue dot. Pick up the glue dot there, see that's a little sticky glue dot. And I'm going to place it just right where my little mess up was, and then just put the bow there, and it kind of looks like the bow is just sitting right there. And then only you and I know that I've messed that up. So simple, just black and white card. Again, I could add some more embellishments on there. I could add some more colors, some bling. A few other things would be to maybe add some rhinestones or some pearls. I'm thinking maybe some rhinestones might look good. So the other tip, if you're adding bling to a project, stay with even numbers. So these have glue dots on the back of them already. So doing not even numbers, odd numbers, so doing 3 or 5 works out well if you're adding some bling to your project. And I'll just pop that there. So just adding a few rhinestones changes the whole look of that card. So those were 2 quick and easy cards to make with just some white cardstock and some colored ink. So there we go, quick and easy. And those were 2 cards made out of the one piece of cardstock. Now if we have a look at doing something with the darker cardstock and the different direction, so this one's pulling that way, stamping directly on here would be difficult to see. So this is one that you would want to do layers. So for this card, I'm going to do very little stamping. I'm going to do most of my things with layers. Now I did a video years ago showing different layers, and this is a template that you can make with scrap cardstock to show different layers, so when you're trying to design your card you can figure out what looks good on the card. Now I will, as I said in the beginning of the video, I'll put a link to other videos that I talk about in this one. So this is 14.85 centimeters and 10.5, and that is the full front of the card. That would fit the full front because I cut the cards to that dimension. Now you can do that as a layer on top, but usually when you do layers you want a little bit to be showing around the edge. So then the next is I did them in 1/2 centimeter increments. So this was 10.5 centimeters. The next one I did it at 1/2 centimeter smaller on both sides, and you can see right there you can see just a little bit of the other color shows through. So see that? And then you can see on the card, like if I put that on this cardstock, you can see a little bit of the background color and then that layer. So doing the template is quite good because you can decide, use the pieces in increments going down at 1/2 centimeter. So you could figure out what kind of layers you want. Sometimes it's cardstock, sometimes it's designer series paper. You know, you could even design it down and have bigger gaps between each section. So this template just gives you an idea what things will look like if you do them in the different layers. So even like with these 2 small ones, I could use 2 different sizes on the card. Say I was doing the card like that. I could have 2 different layers there. I could have a layer this way. I could have layers overlapping. So having the template with the different size layers is a good starting point for you when you're doing card making. And so for this card, I'm going to do it this direction. I'll move that half out of the way. And I've already pre-cut what I'm going to use. So I've decided to use designer series paper. This is from our holiday catalog. It's Tidings of Christmas, and there's lots of different colored paper in this pack. With Stampin' Up, their designer series paper is also double-sided. We call it DSP for short. Some people refer to it as being double-sided paper for DSP. So you can use either side. And with the paper, one of the convenient things is on the packaging it tells you, let's see, is that going to focus? There we go. So it tells you the colors that are in the pack. Not every piece of paper in the pack has those colors in it, but those are the colors used throughout the pack. This one here has most of them except for the basic white color. And so you can see, and the packs come in different sizes. This one is 6 by 6 inches, or you can get them in 12 by 12 inches and then cut them to your size. So here I decided to have a bit of green showing around the side there, so that's quite a bigger piece. So that's I cut it at 9.5 by 14 point. Oh wait, 9.5 by 13.8. So I use that template there. So I could do it that way and have a lot of green showing around the edge, or I could do another layer of cardstock, which picks up the light brown in there, and have that there, and then I actually get more colors. So you can see the difference between having different layers and how many layers you have, and you can carry on doing more and more layers. So I'm picking up colors from the cardstock, from the designer series paper. So we've got the Evening Evergreen, which is the background, and this is Sahara sand that I'm using there. And I've gone ahead and used a few dyes. Now dyes complement stamps a lot of the times, and they are metal, little pieces of metal that have raised edges, and you put it through a die cutting or embossing machine, and it cuts the images out. So some dies cut out images on their own. Other dies are meant to cover stamped images and cut the outline of the stamped images. So I've used this die here in the Forever Flourishing die set, and I've cut it out 4 times because I'm going to make a wreath. I'm going to turn this into a Christmas card. So I simply got that cut out 4 times, and that's going to be my wreath. And because it's a dark piece of cardstock, if I don't put anything inside, if you try to write in there like you're writing your message, it's not going to be seen very well unless you write it, you know, with a white ink or something like that. So again, I cut a matte for the inside, and I went with the same measurements for the outside, so you see a little bit of green there, and you'll be able to write your message on there. Now if you want to stamp your message in there, I suggest you do that first, because every piece of cardstock has 2 sides. So if you stamp it first and you don't like the way it looks, you can turn it over and try again on the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp a sentiment on the inside before I stick it down. And I'm going to do it with the Evening Evergreen. Let me move a few things out of the way. So most people stamp their sentiments right at the top or in the middle. You can put it wherever you want. Keep in mind, you want room for people to be able to write in the card, or for you to write your message in the card. Now, because I can't see through there, I turn it over and I just check that the ink looks like it's everywhere and not rubbed around the edges. I'm just going to pop that right there in the top without wobbling it, straight down, straight up. Okay, so you notice it's a bit darker one side than the other. I probably didn't ink it up enough. So I can turn it over because I haven't stuck it down yet. And I can simply try again. Okay. And then I can decide which side I like better. So I think I was just putting too much pressure on one side. So there versus that side. All right. Now with your stamps, when you're done with them, it's a good idea to clean them off. Now if there's a lot of ink on there, I recommend just stamping on some scrap paper just to get the excess ink off of it. And then you can use anything really to clean it. You could use wet wipes, a damp cloth. It's good not to use harsh soap on it, but we also have chamois. Now mine has been used quite a lot, so it's quite dirty, but this simply has water on it. It's just wet, and if I press and pull up, it sucks out a lot of that ink, and I can just press and wobble it a bit, and giving lots of pressure, it sucks the ink out, and it also leaves the stamp dry, so the ink has come off and dry using the chamois. You can use the chamois on either type of stamp. You could just take this one and rinse it under your sink. Do not rinse the red rubber, because see, there's foam there, and the getting it that wet can cause the foam to come away from the red rubber. This one is just all one piece, so it can be rinsed. So I suggest just use some simple water on it with a chamois or just a damp cloth. So there's the inside of my card, and you can stick it down a few different ways. You can stick things down. You could just use liquid glue. You could use tear and tape or double-sided tape. These are also Stampin' Up! Products, so I'll just check which side I like. I like that side. And you don't need to go overboard on your adhesives. Just keep in mind, when you give it to somebody, they're not going to try to pull it apart, hopefully. You give it to a young child, maybe they will. But just a bit of tape or adhesive on one side. And I like to do, if I'm using tape, I make what I call tabs. So I pull it and bend it that way. So the only sticky part that is showing at the moment are the two edges. So that way I can set it down and line it up to give myself an even border around all the edges. And when I'm happy with that, I just press down on the sides that are sticky, and then I can pull it away. If that wasn't stuck down properly, I can just slide up the two corners that are stuck down and reset it to make it more even. So that's what the tabs are good for, and then you simply pull them away and it holds it in place. So even though I didn't put glue down here, it doesn't matter, because chances of somebody trying to pull that apart is very slim. So that's the inside. And then when you're decorating the outside, always know where your fold is. So quite often we end up, people sometimes make it and then realize, oops, I did it the wrong way around, and we tend to call those left-handed cards because they open the opposite way. So then you can put your other base down. So another thing you can use for sticking things down is liquid glue, and again, use it sparingly. You don't need a lot, so just around the edges is sufficient, and you don't want it too close to the edge because you don't want the glue oozing out. So I don't have to stick it down in the center. Again, nobody's really going to try to pull the card apart. And when you put it down, the other benefit with the liquid glue is because it's liquid, you can wiggle it into place. I say it gives you wiggle room, so you can gently move it into place if it's not right where you want it to be, and then just rub around the edges to help that glue spread. So those are your adhesive choices. Now I'm going to stick this layer down there, If I wanted to put a ribbon around it, this is where you would put the ribbon around the piece before you stick it down. So the edges are hiding underneath the paper. But this one I'm not going to do a ribbon. So I'm just simply going to glue it into place. And sometimes I put a little squiggle in the middle. But that's not necessary. When you are putting paper down, your designer series paper, check to see if it's directional, okay? To me, it looks like the leaves are going that direction. Sometimes things are not directional, and it doesn't matter which way up you put them. And again, because this is liquid glue, I can just check the corners are where I want them to be, and then just simply rub it into place. Now I'm going to create a wreath. And I will use another adhesive for that. So roughly that's going to be my wreath. But before I do the wreath, I want to do my sentiment. And I'm picking out a color from inside there. Probably should have gone with the blue now that I think about it. And I want it to be going across the bottom. So this is just a scrap piece of the same color there. And I want it to go straight across the bottom. And I'm just going to gently mark my finger where I want that to be, and then I can cut that just to give me my width. So that's where I want my words to go in the bottom, and I've chosen the words Happy Holidays, and I think I want them centered. Now the words I was thinking originally, I might do that, having them come out the side. So this is where designing, you can take your time designing. So I might come out the side, or I might go straight on. I think coming out the side might be nice. And I'm going to stamp it with the Evening Evergreen, again to bring in the colors from the background. I could have gone with any of those colors because there's Misty Moonlight, Evening Evergreen, Soft Succulent, I believe that's Real Red, and the Sahara Sand. So we'll see how it looks in green, and I might change my mind. The nice thing with the see-through photopolymer stamp is you can see where you're stamping. So on a little strip like that, you can see where it goes. I like how that looks, so I'll leave that. And always close your ink pads. So that's going to go right about there, which gives me an idea of where my wreath is going to go. So you can pop that down. You can glue that straight down, or you can use what we call dimensionals. So that's a double-sided foam, so it's sticky on both sides, bit of foam. We have mini dimensionals and our full-size dimensionals. And that just gives a bit of depth to the card. So unlike our original cards that were stamped straight on there, this has a bit of depth because of the ribbon, but this one doesn't because it's just stamped flat. So dimensionals give a bit of height and interest to your card. And once you stick it down, then you just simply press in the center to get the paper to come up. And you peel off the paper, and there you go. Put it the right way up. And how you put your sentiment on is up to you. This one I decided to go the full way across, so you could have it coming out at an angle, however you'd like. Now for the wreath, I'm kind of deciding how big. I cut 4 of these. You could even make the wreath smaller with only using 3. But I want it to be a nice size wreath. And I'm going to glue these flat. Again, a little goes a long way, so you don't need to put glue on the whole thing, just on some of the edge pieces that stick out a bit. And so I'm just putting little dabs of glue on those areas. And then I'm just going to work my wreath the way I want it to look. Just press it down gently. The Tombow liquid glue is fabulous because it glues in place pretty quickly. So as I work around, I'm going to see what height. So I'm going to do the opposite side, and that way I can try to make my wreath more even. But you can decorate the front however you'd like, so just put, just stamp on it, put some paper on it, however you'd like, maybe some stickers if you have that. So I'm going to put that right about there, sort of similar to the other side. And then that gives me an idea of where to place my other two sides. So this is just like a leaf garland, designer's die, but you can use it for whatever you'd like. So by using 4 of them together, I've now created a wreath. So you can think outside the square with the tools that you have. And it's just your imagination, however you want it to look. Now I chose this die because it looked similar in shape to some of the leaf images in the background. And so there's my wreath done there. Okay. And now I'm going to bring in a ribbon for my wreath. This ribbon happens to be the Misty Moonlight, which is the blue I picked up from the designer series paper. So the question is, do I put my ribbon down at the bottom or at the top? Again, I tied it on the roll first because that wastes less ribbon. Otherwise you pull out a piece, you tie up your bow, and you either have too little or too much. So thinking that looks kind of cute there. So again, liquid glue doesn't hold that down very well. I could do a dimensional, or I could do double-sided tape. Not a dimensional. A glue dot. And the glue dots, they come in a roll, and you just simply find it on the roll. So there's the glue dot there. Place what you want to stick onto the glue dot. There's a glue dot on the bottom. And then just pop it where you want it to go. There we go. So now I just want to add some bling, some embellishments to make it look a bit prettier. And for this card, I'm going to use the red rhinestone. So now I'm picking up the other color that's in the background, the red, simply with the rhinestone. So the only thing I stamped on this card was the sentiment. That's all I stamped. So these have got adhesive on the back. You can just peel them off with your fingers, or you can just simply use the tip of your scissors. And I'm just going to place a few here and there. I think I'll do them in maybe groupings. Try to do them in groupings of 3. Maybe some of the areas where I've got the overlap, so it's not too green in those spots. Kind of looks like a few different groupings of berries on my wreath. And so you can decorate it however you'd like. If you have other colors you want to use or different embellishments, feel free to do that. But it's interesting how whenever you see like holly and stuff, it always seems to be in groupings of 3 berries. I haven't actually looked at a holly bush in years, so I don't know if they actually do have grow in 3 berries or not. So I'm just going to pop a few odd ones in there as well. I think that looks pretty good. A few groupings. And then I might just pop a few on the sides here. There we go. So I didn't actually count to see if I had a odd number of colors on there. So there you go. So that is the same size card but cut a different way, so it opens this direction. And I just used some die cuts, some gems, ribbon, and I only stamped one thing, but I did the different layers on the designer series paper. Now I still have this piece left, and I can do another card with that, but I wanted to show you a couple different ways of using the same cardstock. So for the card, you don't have to use the standard size how it opens. You can do other things. You can fold it, so you can fold it up, and it's the same size card, but by doing a few changes like folding different areas, you get a completely different look. So there, I've folded that over. So now I can have the card open like this, and so I could have decoration there. I could have the decoration come all the way over. If I do the same fold and I fold it that way, I could have the card open this way and turn into an easel card. So when it opens, it would sit there and you put something down in the front to hold it in place. Or it could open this way and the same way, hold it in place that way. I could cut a piece off and have a smaller size card showing here. I could cut that whole section off and just have a different opening to it. So there's lots of different things you can do with the cards. So we went from just ink on paper, one color ink with a few embellishments on the same piece of paper. This one had a few different layers. And now I'll show you some other samples that I've already done. So here is the simple stamped on the card with the ink, and then I did a decoration and I raised that up with some dimensionals, so it gives it that look. And then I just put a few things on the inside. So that's straight, similar to that where you just stamped straight on there. Here's one where I stamped in the background paper, and because it was a lighter color, I was able to do that. So I've stamped strawberries to give me a background look, and then I used my mat, one of the smaller pieces of the mat, for the focal point. So you see the strawberries in the background, and then you have the embellishments on the front. And then I did a similar thing on the inside. The reason my inside piece is smaller is I was just using up some scrap cards. So that was smaller, and I just stamped some images around the outside so it didn't look so plain. And this was a case where that was one piece of the half of the card, so that's half the card, and this was the other half of the card. So there's two cards, both with the Poppy Parade color, and they're going different directions. So I made two cards with the same base. This one here, I ended up doing a bigger piece that I stamped on for the front, again with the layers of the strawberries, and then the card inside, just stamped on and layered up. So it gives you that mat. Here's another case of using the mats as well. So again, stamped on the background cardstock. It's crumb cake. And then I used 3 different mats, so 3 different colors, but one of them I embossed. So if you're going to emboss on something and stamp, you need to do the stamping first before you put it through the embossing machine, and then just put some stockings on there that brings in the colors from the background. So again, here I'm just going with 3 colors like the first one I did with my trees. So with the trees here, I used 3 colors in that card, and this one again 3 colors. And so the inside I brought in the same 3 colors with the layers and the stamping. This one again is a basic white card. Now I've got the different layers. Now see how it's much closer to the edge with the green there, so I did my mats closer. And this is where you want to stick your ribbon behind the mat before you stick it down. That way it gives it a nice finish. It's folded over the edge there. And this ribbon was actually white. I colored it with my Stampin' Blends, which is an alcohol-based pen, to give it a different color. And I just replicated the images on the front. No sentiment on the front of this one, but I have it on the inside, and then replicated the flower again on the inside. Again, having a very narrow border. This one here is a black base and the white front, so I stamped on the front, and then I put some embellishments on there. And brought in the color, you might not be able to tell, but that's actually green, not black, and the poppies are done in black. So I brought in the colors there, and again, just had a nice plain inside, plenty of room for people to write what they want. This card, again, is another landscape card. This one's a bit more complicated to color up. This I copied straight from the Stampin' Up! Catalog, but it has the different borders with the paper, but this one I did straight to the edge. So this side comes straight to the edge, but then you have the borders you can see at the top and the bottom. And then in the inside, sponged up some of the edges of the cardstock to give it a bit more interest. Again, bringing in the extra colors. So there's 3 different colors on there. Now, here we come to a card, that same size card. And at first look, you'd think it was the same exact type of card, but this one actually opens that direction. So here, I did the stamping on the background and then did different layers. Again, this is one that I copied from the main catalog. And this is from some of the paper. This isn't stamped, that's some of the designer series paper. The dies will cut it out. And the only stamping I did is the background leaves and the words on the front. And then I had a few leftover strips, so I added that for decoration on the inside. Here we go with another Christmas card. So that's the exact same type of card, but this time it opens that direction. Not a lot of color in this one either, so it has the gray background and the white on the front and the inside. But using one of the dies that does cut some little holes, gives the white a bit of interest. And then I emboss. See how that's shiny? That's embossing. So there's other videos you can watch that talk about embossing. And again, I used a die to give some interest to the inside with the dots. And used a die to cut out some specialty glimmer paper. This one opens the same way as the one we just saw. Here we go with the different layers. So this is where using the different matte layers can help me decide how much I want to be seen of the different parts. So I'm showing much more around the edge with the cherry cobbler and a lot more of the designer series paper. But then the center is the focal point with the die cut and decorated bubbles. Again, I used my blends to color the threads because this was only in white, so I colored it a different color and then copied it similar on the inside. Same style of card, but this one is opening with the fold on the left. And this one has lots of different layers going on with it. So stamped images, die cut out, ripped some of the cardstock after I embossed it. And again, if you want the words, stamp it before you emboss. And this is designer series paper there. So lots of different layers going on there. And then just the one simple one on the inside with a little bit of stamping on the corner. Again, this is just a plain white background card. I stamped the edges straight onto the card and then I decorate it with the designer series paper and different images that I've stamped up to give it different layers. So that's just simple white card and just decorate at the front. This one, again, it was copied from the catalog, changed slightly. So in this case, the three layers on the front, the back base card and those two layers are all the same color, but because I gave them different textures and cutouts, etc., it gives a bit more dimension. So this background piece there has been embossed to give us some rough lines, and then I have die cut some pieces out there, and then just had 4 squares that I stamped and arranged them however I wanted. This time I chose 4 different colors, and then the inside I just replicated the colors in the corner to bring some interest. The next 3 cards are all from the Dragonfly set, and they've got a mixture of paper, cardstock, etc., what I've shown you in this video. So we've got the stamping straight on the card, different designer series paper in strips, so this time I just used different strips. This was actually left over from some of the pieces of other designs I did. Again, stamped the same color here for the dragonfly and the flowers, and then just added some embellishments, ribbons, some words, colored it in, and the inside brought some interest in with replicating the dragonflies on the inside. That's the dragonfly paper, all the same size squares. Doesn't show up as well, but you can see, hopefully, I have stamped some of the dragonfly images in the background. But as you see with the dark cardstock, it doesn't always show the stamping very well. And then just added some embellishments. So there's just a stamp in the background and there on this card, and then inside. This one stamped on a white piece of cardstock to go in the background. Again, just using a few different pieces of paper here. So I brought in the colors that were from the designer series paper, the Misty Moonlight and the Bumblebee for the colors here. This was cut out from designer series paper, so those aren't stamped. So the stamping was the dragonflies, the words, and below the images there's a few little bit of stamping to give it shadow. And then on the inside, again, I was just using up a bit of white cardstock, so I didn't cover the whole inside. And you don't always need a lot of room to write, but here, being stamping straight on the base, it's easier to see because the base isn't that dark. Another card where I went with just this case, I think I had 4 different colors. This one, again, it was copied from the main Stampin' Up! Catalog. So just the base cardstock and white card was all I used here, and then just different colored inks, sponged a bit in the center, and again the back. So this one just has 2 different colors of cardstock. Here's some of our Christmas ones. This is a case where I was showing you with the templates, and I show you in the other video with the templates. I do have one that's the full front of the card, and you might think, well, why should I have a template for the full front of the card? Something like this. So this is actually a red card base, but I've covered the whole front with the designer series paper, and then I've added different layers of paper and embellishments and heat embossed, white heat embossed some of the images. And this is a sticker from one of our Memory and More pack, and then on the inside brought in some of the colors from the outside. This one, the cardstock I used was simply white cardstock. So the base is white, the layer is white, the images were stamped on white cardstock, and then they were colored in with pencil, and I had different colored designer series paper in the background. So this was just black ink and white cardstock, and then some pencils to color it in to match up some of the background. So I just die cut little holes, as you would, as you could call them, through the cardstock, and then layered it up, and there we go. So not a lot to that, looks much more complicated. This is a case where I was telling you originally about how you could fold your card to do something different. So for this, the card I simply folded the edge down, not totally in half, just a partial, maybe 1/3 of it I folded over, and that allows me to see some of the card here, and I put the designer series paper there. And the reason I did that is the designer series paper is so pretty. So that way I can see all the paper when I open it up, and I have it matched up. So I cut the sections so it matches up perfectly. And when it's closed, you can't see any of those, any of the inside here. But when you open it, and then when it sits at the table, it would sit like that. So it would sit sort of like that. So that's where folding your cardstock can give you an interesting looking card. So this these are two cards made from the same white base. Again, I used the DSP that cover the entire back. I stamped images on 4 sections. This again is copied from one of the samples in the catalog with our new plants. And it's the same type of card, but this time I've turned it to the landscape and cut down the background. So same background as that, but this one's slightly smaller. And then used embossing folder to make the white card have some interest, and sponged a bit of words on there. Again, tucking the ribbon behind before I stuck it down gives you the nice edge there. And then just straight onto the card there. So these 2 cards, there's a video showing how to do this. This is the Joseph Coat technique, or the faux Joseph Coat technique. I've done both of them here. Now they look like the same card, same type of card, except this one opens that direction, and this one opens that direction. So if you'd like to see how to make this, I will have a link in the description to this video here to make the butterflies. It's a lovely, fun card to make, but they're made 2 different ways. It's very interesting how they come out. And there's also a video, this has been one of my most popular ones. Now this brings in both. So you saw these cards open 2 different ways. Well, this one does both. So the card opens this direction, and then it opens that direction. So I've used the 2 different ways of cutting the card to give it interest. So it's like a double card. So one way and the other way. And again, it's simply the card, just depending on how you cut it and how you put it together. So you start out with the card bases like I showed you originally. These simple card bases, that's what you start out with. And depending on how you cut them and how you fold them, you come up with a myriad of different cards. So this fold here, how I showed you how it folds that way, well, that's what we have with this card. You can see the side that's folded there and down, and then it pops up. So that's what we call an easel card. So you can attach something to the top, so another piece glued onto the top of that fold, and it gives it interest. So it opens up like this, you have room to write there, and the card looks like a regular card when it's folded down. Another easel card, again, the fold is the same. So the background card here was white, but I put the embellishments in the green for the front. So this one's a post-it note holder, but you start with the same base card and then attach something to the front. Another way to do that card, so here's that card there, fold that over, and then this card here is simply the same base, but I've slit a section in there and glued the pieces together. So working with that same base, there we have that section there glued over, and that allows me to have a pocket for my tags. And then I've made a smaller card which I've glued into the center of it. So just working with the bases that I showed you, you can come up with lots of different card ideas. And this is another easel card, but instead of having the easel go this direction, the card was cut and bent the other direction. So it's the long way. So there you can see the easel here, the fold for the easel there. So you start out with that, and you pop it up like here, and that's your easel card. And it actually looks like a book. And there is a video for this one that I've done. So this does look complicated, but it isn't. It's just a bunch of different pieces of cardstock put together, and you have a beautiful card. So I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. Look in the description for links to other videos showing you how to make some of these other cards if I've inspired you to take it further. But remember, you just start with your base card, cut in half, fold in half, and then from there just ink and stamps and maybe some paper and embellishments depending on how much you want it to fancy it up. So you can get quite fancy with lots of different embellishments and different papers, or you can just have it nice and simple with just some stamping and a couple pieces of cardstock. So please give me a thumbs up and look below in the descriptions to go to these other items. You can also have a look at my blog for more tips and some of these projects I've done in the past. If you want to buy any of the products so you can do your own crafting at home, go to my website, michellekritchley.stampin'up.net if you're in New Zealand, or talk to your demonstrator. If you're in my area, I do classes, so you can look at my events on there, or you can just message me with any questions you have. Thanks so much for watching. Bye!